Well, those are just highlights of President Donald Trump's speech to leaders at the World Economic Forum just a few hours ago. President Trump is still at the WEF in Davos addressing other questions, I guess, from the audience. Let's bring in now our Washington correspondent, Maria Byrd, who's been monitoring the speech closely from Washington, where she's been. Maria, great to speak with you on President Trump's address, especially when he talked about Greenland as sounding more like an appeal he was making to the rest of Europe. It's different from the rhetoric in the past that he's made, where he has, in some instances, said he would take Greenland by force and America must have Greenland. How is the Trump administration explaining the president's remarks about not using force this time in the Arctic territory?
Thank you. This was over an hour speech. We didn't end till close to 10 a.m. Eastern time here, as we all were locked into listening to the speech by the president. If you listen to some of the pieces the president talks about, he tried to touch on the area of diplomacy. He made a point to recognize Marco Rubio and his focus around diplomacy and some of the things that he has provided the president advice on around diplomacy. So I think that was his push to try to show that he is a diplomatic president, that he does have some characteristics of diplomacy. I think he also does understand that this is a very contentious situation, especially as we look at our relationships in Europe and how this could create major upheaval with many of our allies. And specifically, I know that he did speak around Canada and kind of some of the tension between the U.S. and Canada there, but noting how close and bordering country of Canada, the need to really have that region to be secure. And so I think he's believes that the world will agree with him and believes that the world will find a way. And he's going to most likely, as we've seen in the past, use tariffs and obviously impacting the economics of many countries as a potential way to implore individuals to agree with him for the United States to have Greenland, acquire Greenland.
Yes, and the president almost seemed to say that NATO was standing in his way, of getting Greenland. America has been bereft of security without Greenland, and he'd gotten NATO. America has gotten NATO nothing, beg your pardon, from NATO, has gotten nothing in return for all the security, and taking on the economic heavyweights, carrying the economic heavyweight for NATO, paying of dues, supporting the organization financially, and other NATO countries not pulling their weight. He also talked about the U.S. handing over Greenland to Denmark, and I dare say that that's not completely correct. The ICJ did rule in 1933 the Greenland belonged to Denmark. So I wonder how this piece of history, however, is being interpreted back home.
Well, you bring up some very key components here as it relates to that historical fact. The president, as we know, is very clear and concise with the way in which he delivers messages. And I would say here at home, I don't know if people really, I think that people might go research to see if that's true. Many people don't know much of the 1933 history and individuals who weren't around during that period of time to really be able to reflect on exactly how that occurred. But the president, I think, is trying to provide a message that states that the U.S. does have some sort of a need or desire and also kind of an inherent right to Greenland. And I think that was his focus there in trying to provide that messaging. But as you mentioned, the ICJ ruling in 1933, I think Americans are not surprised. I think they're really trying to take in the full scope of the speech because there was a lot there. And obviously the U.S. stock market took quite a hit yesterday. And so hoping that this economic forum in some way does provide and that the president is able to in some way repair some of the global challenges that the U.S. obviously faces.
And finally, Maria, do you think President Trump's address to leaders at Davos will help change their minds and perhaps be more compassionate towards President Trump's desire. Because if you do listen to him very carefully, President Trump's tone was more somber. He almost seemed hurt by the fact that Europe would not grant him this one wish, considering all that America has done for the continent.
It's very hard to, obviously, you couldn't hear a pin drop in the audience during the speech. We know that there are several bilateral meetings happening between today and tomorrow. We know that he plans to have very clear conversations, but there was a lot said in the speech. There's some things that some world leaders could be offended by. There's some things in the speech that they might agree with. And so I think it's really going to depend on where these meetings land after this. It also depends upon what happens around tariffs as it relates to individuals doing business with the U.S. That is obviously a major stake in this whole process and in what the president's been trying to put forth. And so at this time, I think we are really going to have to wait and see. It looks as if we're not on the immediate acquiring of Greenland. It looks like there could be some more diplomatic conversations. And also it's going to depend on Greenland's response to this as well. I think we can expect to see another meeting in the United States, maybe seeing some of the world leaders coming to discuss this further. But I'm not sure if, even though to your point, he had a very somber tone, if that did totally take a different direction for world leaders to now agree and believe that the president of the United States should lead the efforts in the United States acquiring Greenland. I think that we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of days.